libraries taught Lena how to wait. Mill Street taught her how to walk while waiting. She had come to Prestbury to catalogue a bequest that smelt of damp and saxifrage, parish histories, handbills, sermons stiff with dust. In the long afternoons when paper sank into the quiet like a pebble into a pond, she took herself down to the lane where cottages lean in like old men telling the same joke for the pleasure of its shape. Mill Street is always going somewhere slightly older than wherever it arrives. You can see it in the way the curbs have softened under years of small wheels. You can smell it in wood smoke that smells of orchards, not forests. Lena walked with hands in pockets, the way you do when you're careful not to ask questions of a place that knows more than is polite to tell. The first time she saw him, she thought he was a man late for tea, brisk, head tipped, a look about the shoulders that says the errand matters more than who gave it. He did not glance at her. He did not glance at the house where a child's bicycle leaned, disapproved of by its own handlebar. He trod a line that made no sense with the present paving, but lined up, perhaps, with a gate that had been a gate when the lane still remembered hooves. He wore a short cloak, the practical kind that minds the weather without making a speech about it. His boots were not boots, they were a suggestion of boots. When Lena slowed, he did not. When she quickened, he did not. He passed the lamp that everyone agrees is not necessary but loves, paused as if surprised by the presence of a star that had climbed down to help, and then carried on until the cottages decided he had gone far enough and folded the sight of him into their angles. What was strange was not that he appeared. It was that he adjusted. The second week, he took a step to the side at the place where a low wall bulged, not because he saw it, but because the habit of not knocking things over survives us. The third week, when a car had tucked itself carelessly on the verge, he seemed to frown, only a bringing together of purpose, in the air above his shoulders, and then slightly altered his line to pass through a gate that had stopped being a gate around the time Lena's great-grandmother stopped using nib and ink. She began to bring small things, the way you bring time to a stew you're not sure needs it, a chalk scrap, a slate chip, a postcard of the parish map, circa 1840. She was scrupulous, left them on window ledges as if forgotten by someone else. She did not set anything in the lane. You do not feed a path, but you can set out the language in which it once thought. One evening, she stood where two doorsteps made a square of courtesy, and the messenger passed her so close she felt the temperature of old wool. It is a specific cool, like shade, that has learned to be kind. In that moment, she knew, without evidence, but better than evidence, that he had long ago carried a message that did not arrive and had spent an honest portion of the time since making sure no part of the lane would stop being a lane on his account. It is not guilt, it is maintenance. The librarian in her could not help the itch of scholarship. She pored over maps until the parish boundaries began to look like animals with their own nervous habits. Twice in 2 centuries, she found mention of a steward who kept the walk, and once of a boy trusted with a letter on a night when letters mattered. There were no names. Names are not always the relevant part of a story. In January, the lane grew tight with dusk before tea. The messenger kept his time, just after the day considered itself finished, just before people pulled the curtains and left only house shapes on the street. Lena waited with hands warming around a paper cup. When the rhythm in the air changed, the particular readiness a lane gets when something returned to it is nearly home. She set the cup on a step and stepped aside so the space would be a little larger for whatever passed. Evening, she said, as she had learned to say to all honest things. The messenger angled slightly, as if nodding to a rule. He kneeled, not really, but the air lowered itself the way a knee lowers, and reached for something not there. The slot in a door stained darker by a century of hands, perhaps, or the iron ring that lifted a latch. Lena, feeling suddenly that a polite idea had misplaced its object, reached in her pocket and found the 1840 postcard folded twice. Without thinking, she held it up where a letterbox would once have been. If anything changed, it changed inside the lane. A small relief moved along the bricks, like a cat deciding the house was in order. The messenger's course straightened by a hair's breadth, and his going away felt less what? Not less urgent, less alone. He took his old road like a thought that had finally remembered the word it was after. Lena went home, as you go home when you have been allowed to help without being necessary. She put the postcard back in the drawer and labeled it used, in a hand so small you would miss it if you were in a hurry. She told no one, but she kept walking Mill Street at the hour when the lamp is the right amount of unnecessary, and she kept her pockets amicably full of minor maps. If you go there and feel a purposeful air go by, let it have the straight of the pavement and stand where people used to stand while errands passed. You may see no more than the tilt of a cloak where a shadow should not have a cloak. That is plenty. Not all messages arrive in the addresses we expect. Sometimes their destination is only the lane itself, glad to have its function named again.